Saturday. Good to be here early on your Saturday. A little earlier. We used to get up and do an early Saturday morning show. It's been a little crazy last few months and haven't done that. Try to do some of that again. Happy Saturday. Hope you have a great weekend planned for you. Here in just a bit, Biscuit Boy be in the house. We'll have the Cornbread Man and Biscuit Boy morning show. Didn't broadcast last night. Just really still trying to get through some difficult days. Still have family in, spending time with them. We'll be this morning after a bit before they venture back home. So we'll try to have a breakfast together here in a bit. And I hope you have a good plan for this weekend. It may just be rest, and that's a good thing. Rest and worship. That's always good. Life balance. Get you some life balance going on. And embrace the day, enjoy the day. No matter what challenges it has, you have a day. Spend it wisely, and have some make some memories. That's what I always tell my family: make some memories, and you'll enjoy life that way. You have something to look back on. Every day is filled with just some people live their life, and I get it. We have to. We focus on news and we focus on some of the things that's going on, as we should, but that can't be the totality of your day. I see some people that's all they focus on all day long is the negative, the struggle, the whatever. You have to balance in things. It's not being negligent. It's not being not paying attention to what's going on or anything like that. It's just you have to have that. Stop and smell the roses kind of thing. Do something with the kids. When I was growing up, I mean, we had just as much turbulence, if not more, in the world when I was a kid. And my parents did a pretty doggone good job, I think, of shielding me from the bulk of it while also exposing me to enough that I knew what was going on in the world. I knew there was political turmoil. I knew there was racial strife. I knew there was the Vietnam War. I knew there had been assassinations. I knew about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I knew about those things. I knew about the kidnapping of the Israeli athletes and the horrible tragedy that was. You could go on and on. And I knew about those things, but at the same time, it was a rough decade, the '70s. But at the same time, I had a great time because my parents did a really good job of teaching me, to enjoy the freedoms you have, the life that you live, and just to have there's nothing wrong with as a kid being a kid, and nowadays there's a lot of push for people to push their kids to grow up quicker. It's all about advancing them very quickly into things. I get it with academics and stuff, and you're trying to, get ahead of the next thing, get your career, but sometimes kids just need to be a kid. And I've known some people who push their kids, and the kids love sports, and they were really good at it. And it became not what the young person wanted. I'll say person because it could be boy or girl, especially nowadays. And they would push their kids. It became not what the kid wanted; it became what the parent wanted. And I've known people, and I had one particular gentleman. He got extremely mad because his son came to him. He's playing year-round ball. I mean, basically year-round. And he comes and tells his dad, "I'm done. I just want to be. I just want to enjoy life. I just want to be a kid." He was a young teenager at the time, and his dad exploded, told him he was ruining his life and all this stuff. Ridiculous. Let your have yourself. That time. Let your kids have that time. They'll figure it out. They'll figure out what they want. Decide what. I always tell my kids, I'll support you in whatever you want to do. If you do it, when you start, you're gonna finish. Whether that meaning a year, like if whatever that season is, you start, you're gonna finish. You tell me halfway through, or a quarter through, or three quarters through, whatever. That next year I don't want to play. That's fine. That's your decision. I'll support you in that, but you're gonna finish what you started because we need to be finishers and stuff, or try to be. And they played a couple years, maybe one and played three, and they said, I'm done. I said, okay, moved on to other things. And sometimes it becomes all what the parents want. That's not every situation or not. I mean, there was a fight. I remember one time there was. It's so stupid. It's absolutely stupid. And I remember when one of my kids, so we're going back, 30 years ago, 30, a good 30 years ago, and we're on the ball field, and I've seen coaches out in the middle of the baseball field fighting. I've seen coaches that hollered at the other side and ripped their shirts off and say, "Let's get it on." And I've seen parents pull their kids and say, "I won't have my child a part of this circus that you've got going on here." You're not teaching these young men anything. You're teaching them how to be thugs. You're teaching them that the fist is, how not to negotiate, to de-escalate, to work things out. All you're teaching them is how to fight. And they, the kids were not, they weren't into it. They were good kids. They were just like, what in the world? And these are parents who go coach, who want, they want to win, and they'll win at all costs. And when things don't go their way, they're ready to fight. And thankfully, that wasn't everybody, and everybody has stories like that. But it's gotten worse, and now we see the gunplay, going after referees, following them out to their car, coaches attacking other coaches, and now the kids are involved, and they're having the mass throwdown. It's just sickening. I wanted my child to be pushed at, in sports to be the best he could be. Both of them. One of them only played, I think, 1 year. I think he might have played 2, but the other one was a little longer. But I wanted them to experience what it is to have, fight, to be a team member, to battle, to overcome obstacles, endurance, all those things, But at the same time, you want them to have sportsmanship. You want them to learn how to treat other people the right way, be competitive, yes. But at the end of the day, shake hands and, win or lose, as long as you did your best. Maybe you get them next time, but, maybe not. Sometimes you just can't beat certain teams. I remember one year I played, I remember what sport it was now. I think this might have been volleyball. No, it was basketball. It was basketball. And I remember that we were in our group. We were the best team except for one. We just couldn't beat that team. We tried and tried. They were just a little bit better than us, but we gave it everything we had. It teaches you a lot of good things. But nowadays it's become, the kids. We hear the horrible story. If you remember back, Todd Marinovich, and his dad pushed him to be, robo quarterback, and the tragedy of that and what happened with that. Well, we're seeing that on a scale now that's, beyond belief. I mean, everything is, it's seemingly when they're born, they're already on a program or regimen to be the next superstar sports player in sport X, whatever that is. And they're being groomed to that. And everything about their life is built around that. They don't have a life beyond that. Some of them. I'm not saying all of them. Some of them. I'm not here to paint the brush over everybody, because I've seen so many people do great things. As long as the kid wants to be that and go for that, then yeah, challenge them to be the best they can and move forward in those things, and grow and see what their ceiling is and all that. But I was just saying that relation to, I grew up like I say, I had a great childhood. Was there problems? Sure. But my family didn't sit around and focus, although they knew what was going on. My family didn't focus on the news cycle every minute of the day. We didn't have cable till later. I would say that was late 70s, mid to late 70s. I know it's more late 70s, I think, before cable came. And so we had our regular channels or whatever. My dad always watched the nightly, the local news and the national news. And sometimes I'd watch it at 11, as a lot of families did, millions of families. And I remember sitting at his feet and watching, that's why I've always, he's not a young kid. I was always paying attention to politics, but, and hearing the stories, I remember I was 7 or 8 years old when Watergate broke. I mean, I remember all that. Did I understand every single bit of it? No, but I knew there was trouble. I knew what they did. And I knew the investigations were ongoing. I knew the president was in trouble. And I watched the day, he resigned and walked up, Air Force One or Two, whatever it was. And, the big victory. I was watching that live. I seen that. It was a very sad day. I was sad for him. I was sad for America. It wasn't like we hated it. We hated what was going on. But within all that, we knew how to turn things off and go be human beings. Go enjoy, go to church, go play, just be a kid, go, or me and my dad, maybe we're mowing the grass or we're doing a project or we're traveling somewhere, whatever it was, you learn to separate that. And I see a lot of adults make this tragic mistake. They are 24/7, as long as they're awake, they're in the news cycle and they just get deeper and deeper and deeper and they get angry. Their emotions are out of whack. It's like, and they think because they're doing that somehow they're going to warn the world about the coming doom, and they're going to change it somehow. That they're going to make it. We can't change. We can do our part, and we should warn. And we should tell people what's out there. Scripturally, I certainly believe that we warn them of the future without Christ. Absolutely, and I love to teach prophecy. I love to teach future events and all those things. But at the same time, you got to live in the moment. You got to live where you're at. You got to know your lane. And there are things that are locked into place we can't change. We can't change the outcome of it. We can pray for it. Now, that's a powerful tool we have. We can pray to that end, and we can pray that, for our country or leaders, and we should. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And that's just not meaning political leaders, but all leaders. Pray for the family and pray for all those, churches and fellow Christians and the unsaved and all that. And pray for, change to come, pray for things to get better, absolutely. But you can't, you have to be able to have that balance in your life. You have to be able to do that. And I just see people that are, they're being, angry. And I think it's a new form of, I've never heard it put this way, but I really do think, PTSD it's a real thing. I mean, we usually liken it to soldiers in battle. It certainly has that, but it can be anybody. It could be someone who, as a young child, went through a very traumatic childhood, abuse and things like that. They have PTSD. And if you hear the official designations of agencies to determine whether you can get help, I've been in the room listening to people explain what happened to them when they hit those markers of whatever that is. In this case, it was childhood trauma. They were just saying, tell me what's happened, and they told them, and with one or two little things, okay, you qualify. You certainly have a form of it. To what level, I don't know, but you have it. Well, I think we have people that are getting it now just due to immersion into bad things all the time, bad news, bad stories, bad whatever. And it's almost like it's creating trauma within their life, and they're warped. I mean, they're just off the chain, so to speak, and they're never happy. They're constantly angry. That's not normal. I mean, I like to laugh and have a good time, cut up, and you want to spend time with your kids. Can you imagine being the child of someone like that? That every day they're on the edge. They're just almost frantic. They're getting angry. They're hollering, screaming, yelling. They never laugh. They never. I mean, horrible. My dad. I can remember some of my best memories of my dad. Throwing a football with me, or we're wrestling, or whatever. Or we're going somewhere. What you can name 1,000 things and more. Those are great memories. But my dad was certainly knowledgeable what was going on. He was a voter. He would holler at the TV sometimes. And we saw those things. And my mom was, good to address it in different ways. She didn't sit and watch the news all the time, but she knew what was going on. But she, because my dad worked a lot, my mom exposed me to, going places, culture, music, movies, just having a good time, being a kid. And, it gives you that balance that you need. Now we have people, well, we have broken families, certainly, people being raised by, lots of other people, not even their, parents or whatever. Maybe they're in jail or on drugs or rehab, or they can't have them, or they've disappeared. They've left them and abandoned them. Excuse me. You have all that. And they're being raised in situations where they don't have love. They don't have, someone believing in them. I've met people that said, I mean, I've had people break down and cry. They said their parent never told them it's proud of them for anything ever. How can you imagine living a life like that? I mean, you desperately want to hear that, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, they're never proud of you. I mean, come on. And I said, well, I thought I made them cry. I did, but I didn't, but it was for a different reason. They said, I have waited all my life This person is grown, and they're definitely in their 20s. Said all my life, I've waited for someone to tell me they were proud of me. I've never heard it. I can't imagine that. That's something I told my kids. That's something I told my grandkids. When they do something, they make an achievement. I tell them I'm proud of them, and that what it doesn't really matter the outward expression. It's what happens on the inside and the things that they get out of that, and the confidence that they build. That I can now tackle new things. I can move forward. And that's all part of life. Can you imagine working for someone at business or whatever that never told you did a good job? They're always focused on the negative, the things you haven't done, and certainly there are things we always have to get done. And there's a tendency for people to lock on what you haven't accomplished yet, but never miss the time to tell somebody, hey, you did a good job here. Way to go. Proud of, you're helping our team. You're doing it, and then you can address, okay, there's still, give me a timeline on these other things. You did a great job here. Let's, give me that. And, some people, that's all they focus on, what you haven't done, what you need to do. And you have to watch yourself. I mean, it's easy for we sort of focus on, what's not done, like, the project is half done. You don't give them any markers along the way. Well, you still got half of it. It's not done. It's kind of nice to get a little bit of, affirmation along the way. Hey, I'm doing a pretty good job here. I feel like I can finish this as I go through whatever it is. If somebody's painting something or building something or whatever, you want to hear from somebody. Hey, good job. Somebody give you, hey man, what, pat you on the back or whatever. And as you're growing and you're in those early days of good morning, Ernest, and before you two see, okay, how about that, right? Yeah, it's like an addiction that becomes possession. You become ethnically possessed. Yeah, and that's a great point. We are so, the way we're made. I mean, the way God made us. And some people don't believe in God. Okay, that's fine. I'm here to argue with you. I'm a firm believer in the Lord, and I serve. I'm born again by the blood of the Lamb. And but I'm here. The program is not intent to tell you, beat you down. If you say you don't believe in God. It's open discussion. But there is something we all can agree on, is that we need some sort of we need that built into us or instilled into us, something that gives us that feeling that makes us feel good, that we're on some sort of right track, that we're doing good. When you start a new job, and I work in training, you have checkpoints along the way, and you want to know, and you can see that in their face when you say, hey, you're doing a great job. For this point in your training, you are on track, or you're ahead of schedule. That just makes them feel so much better, because sometimes they worry about that. And then if there's something they need to work on, well, you're doing great on 99 things here. We got one little thing. We're going to get that, though. Don't worry. You're doing so good on this other. Not worried about it. It'll come with speed and practice. The speed will come with practice and all that. But I feel horrible for people who are trapped in impossible situations that no matter what they do, they're considered a failure. I couldn't imagine existing in something like that. It would have to do something to you to be in that. And I know people have been raised, or I'll give you one. And this is absolutely, I'm trying to watch my words here because it makes me angry. Somebody that would tell a child, well, I wanted a girl or I wanted a boy, but I got you. Are you kidding me? You would tell a kid. I've heard people tell their kids that, like, well, I wanted a girl, but I got you. Come on. I mean, I've told my kids, this is what I told my kids and my grandkids. This is what I tell them. You're a blessing from God. You are a blessing from God. You are blessing me in my life. You're blessing other people. And God made you the way you made you, yeah, we have failures in our life. We all do wrong. We have to, seek forgiveness for those things we do wrong. And, it's a life filled with, we make a misstep, we make mistakes, we fix it, and we move on. And, you always tell my kids, come and tell me what's wrong. Come and tell me what, we'll work it out together. If you make a big mistake, Come tell me, no matter what it is. It may hurt, but come tell me. It will hurt because I want you the best things for you. It won't hurt. Another thing I would tell them, you can't do anything to make me love you more. And there's nothing you can do that will make me love you less. I love you, and that's it. That's the end of it. Just a full, whatever love I've got, you have it, and there's no favor. Don't try to impress me for love. I just do great things, and I'll be proud of you. But I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you. You have that, and some people just don't hear that. They never hear, the kind words. It's always mixed with something sharp. Another example, I think, is, and I've had guys tell me, listen, this is the way we talk to each other and all that. And I got my little detector said the wife wasn't enjoying it as much as the guy thought, but cut downs, constant cut downs. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I get it. We kind of joke around as husbands, wives, or whatever. There's that little bit of fun, and as long as everybody's okay with it. I think it's good. I've seen situations where the wife was really done with it, and the guy, being stupid, thought he was being cute, and he kept doing it, and he was damaging his wife. And he wasn't even smart enough to see what he was doing. And I've actually told people on the side, hey man, you're being kind of hard on your wife there, and I'm just your business, but she don't look like she's too happy, man. Like I may hurt her feelings. Oh no, we do this all the time. She loves it. Stupid. I can see it, and saying to your wife constantly, "You're so stupid." Really? That wouldn't work with mine, and I miss mine. She just passed, but that wouldn't have worked. But she was a battler. She wouldn't let me do that. But I've seen people that just put down their spouse. And I tell young girls all the time, because my granddaughter she'll have all these friends, and sometimes they're going to dinner with us, or they're on the phone and they're talking or whatever, and they'll say, my granddaughter might say, hey Papa, I've got a friend and she's got this going on, and there's this boy and this is what he's saying to her, and I'm sitting here going, I'm like thinking, if I was her granddad or her dad, I mean, I know where I'd be going. And I was like, how in the world does, and I don't know what's happened in these young girls' lives that will put up with this, but the guy's just scum. He's just scum. Somebody needs to take him behind the building, his daddy, and take him behind the building, and probably, daddy's probably like that. But take him behind the, the woodshed, as they say, or in the woodshed. But he needs to go to the woodshed. And needs to be given an attitude adjustment on how he's talking to these young girls. And he's constantly hurting her, constantly breaking her heart, constant. And they would ask me about it, and I'd say, dump him. And my granddaughter said, Papa, but she cares about him. I said, he's no good. Why would she care about him? I'm very quick on that. I mean, I wish I had the little lever or something. You could just toss people out. Done. Start over. Go looking for somebody else. Somebody gives you value that cares about you. This guy don't care about you. I'm straight on like that. I mean, I'm wanting to like where they live. I don't do it, but I feel like it. I don't know who they are. Like, who is the guy? One time she had somebody on the phone, and they could hear me, and I said, why in the world does she keep running back to that, junk, this horrible person, now I'm blinking. It's her fault. She's the one going back. She's like putting her hand. She was on she could hear you. I said, good. Somebody needs to tell her, because I know what I would do if I was my granddaughter. I know what, if it's my granddaughter, I know what'd be happening. We'd be having a talk. I mean, I'm not going to put up with that. I just, you're not going to come around and treat something that I have that is so precious in this life. And I know people are precious, young people are precious. And, I've heard this before. I heard a guy say years ago on a show, he still does a show from the West Coast up in Oregon, a cattle person. Loved listening to him. And he asked this question once it's been about 3 or 4 years ago that I first started listening to him. And I remember him saying, when are the men of the world, the real true men, going to stand up and protect the kids? When are they going to do that? Because it's happening in every community. And the men of the community used to they'll take care of stuff. But we've gotten so boxed in now, boxed out, and everybody's, the threat of this, the threat of that, going to jail, this thing, lawsuits, whatever. People just don't, and they may do it some, but they don't, not on the scale that it used to happen. I can tell you when I grew up in my neighborhood, crapola wasn't allowed to hang around. You acted up, and if it was a kid, you told them to stop. And if they didn't stop, you went and got the dad, and you told them you stop it or I will. That's your kid. It's your job. I'm not going to put up with it. Not around here. You can either do it or get out. I mean, that's the way it was. I remember my best friend. I love him. He was, unfortunately, we're both 21. He was murdered by a family member. But I can remember he was a big cut up. But his dad and him had a weird relationship. His dad was kind of an oddball in many ways. And one day he was flying down the street. I mean, flying. There's a lot of kids. We used to play on the street in my neighborhood. I mean, and he come flying in and he got out. And my dad said, "Hey, boy," he slow it down. And he said, "You're not my daddy." He said, "Yeah, if I was," I said, "I'd already busted your rear end." And he said, "I'll tell my daddy." And I'm looking at him like, "Are you stupid or something? Like you just said that to my dad? Like you're not smart." And he said, "Well, go get him. Please go get him. I want to see him." And then he goes, "I was just kidding, Mr. Cordell. I was just playing around." My dad said, "I'm not. Don't ever talk to me like that again, or I'll just go visit your daddy." And I went up to him and I said, "You know the code, man. Like, what is wrong with you?" He said, "I just cutting up. I didn't realize he'd get that mad." I said, "Dude, your dad may be on a different level. My dad, he don't play like that." And he goes, "I see that." I said, "Don't ever do that again, man. Don't do my dad like that." I told him. But that's the way it was handled in our community. But nowadays, it's like, one freaking family is terrorizing the whole neighborhood. Everybody's tortured by their activities, what they do, how they treat people, and they won't, the situations would be endless. And people are talking about moving. Why? No, be a community. Go up and say, "This is it. We're not having it no more." People talking. Good morning to you, broski. You got a crack house in your neighborhood. Deal with it. You tell the law, get them out of here. We will. I mean, we have to stand up in America, and it's getting worse. I mean, it is getting worse. But I grew up in that mentality. You just didn't put up with that crap. What happened on the next street? That's for them to handle. But on our street, we didn't put up with that. There was enough people and it didn't matter. And by the way, the women would handle it just as quick as the men would. Grandmas would come out and say, "You stop that right now. You're not doing," whatever it was. They would come out on you. "No way. You're not doing that here." And if somebody come in from out of the neighborhood acting up, they were told to leave and don't come back. And they say, "I'm on a public street. We don't care. We don't care. You act like that around here." Yeah. And is it any wonder why our communities are just falling apart? I mean, it all works hand in hand. The break down the family, how the home and the nuclear family and parents that the new, let's be nice, let's be friends. Let's be friends with our kids. The new, that's not my dad. He's my friend. My dad was never my friend. My dad was my dad. And you know what? I don't get it. If anybody has this happen, if anybody does this, I'm not trying to offend. In my life, you didn't call your dad by his name. I don't know where that started at. Like, I'm David. And they called me David because my dad's name was David. So my dad didn't want me to be called Junior. We had different middle names on purpose. My dad had I don't know why, he just did not ever want a child named Junior. He just was, I don't know why. We didn't have any juniors in the family. I don't know, but he didn't want that. Maybe his dad was like that. I don't know. But so they called me Davy, and that's something, my family still to this day, something, you wouldn't hear, or my friends don't call me that, but Davy. And so I cannot imagine me walking up to my dad and going, "Hey, David." Once I picked myself up off the ground, I would have known that's not the way to address your dad. But I have met people, and I mentioned this in church one time, and I had some people look at each other in a family like, and I figured out, I guess they go with that. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect to find that here. But I just, I never called my dad or my mom by their name. That was dad or daddy or mama or mom, whatever. But it was always this respect there, and never even thought about that. Never crossed my mind. And with everybody else, aunts and uncles were aunts and uncles. It was never, it was Uncle Bob or Aunt Linda. These are real names of my family. I would have never went up and say, "Hey, Linda." My dad, they would first of all they would have handled it. My dad would have so I would have got two addressings out of that. Broski, people are in the fallen state, the fall from the church, destructive nuclear family, rotten culture. You're right, and it's just collapsing. I mean, what the heck? I mean, it makes me angry, and our kids are being raised up around all this crap. I remember, I went to my first job, my first real job. I mean, I mowed lawns uh, when I don't remember what age I started. I was making extra bucks by raking leaves and mowing lawns and stuff like that. My dad taught me work. You want something, boy? You work for it. There was no free money being thrown around. You work for it. And I did. I wanted to. I wasn't like I was like, oh man, I got to work. No, my dad instilled that in me. Go to work. I've always worked. I've worked two jobs now for a number of years. I'll be going to work later today. I have a Monday through Friday, and I've worked. I still believe in that work. And but when I went to my first real job, it was like going to boot camp. Really, it was very military like. It was a grocery store chain, and by the way, it grates on me to this day to go to a store, and it's not everybody, but some are very lax on it, and I don't even know what is addressing me at the cash register. I don't, and that would have never been allowed. I remember going though, and at the store that I worked at. I mean, you get your daily look over. I mean, they'd make sure that you were appropriately shaved. You could have a little mustache. That was it. I mean, there was no beards allowed. And they frowned on mustaches really for the older, football players. Like mustache really, they really didn't want that. But they checked to make sure they were shaved appropriately for the guys and girls' hair had to, be some kind of shape, not just all over their head. But we were lined up like we were in a review in the military roll call, and they would go down the row and they would look at you seriously, person to person, and they would say in front of everybody, you need to shave more. Your collar's dirty on your shirt. Get that took care of. This was a once a month review. They would bring us in and they would do that. Then we also did we did practice things that we had to do in addressing the customers. For me, at that point, I was bagging groceries. So you had to bag. We had did trials on that, speed trials and stuff. Bag it and make sure that it's bagged correctly. Meats with the meats. You don't put rat poison in with the hamburger meat. And these are the days when you had the not the plastic. Plastic didn't come along later. We had the paper bags, the small, the middle, and the large. They would take a razor blade and they would cut the four corners of a bag. And when those fell open, if anything fell, you had to do it again. And they would also look to see that you didn't, put something that was, like I said, poisons, cleaning materials with food, or that you put something that got squashed. You put something on top of bread or whatever, and you would bag it all up. You'd set it there on the thing, and they would come along and do that. And it was very much like that. And then I left that job and I was doing other things in my life, and I went back to that store later and I would shop in there and I would see the change had happened. I mean, I don't know when it happened, but I mean, it had started happening. I mean, people started having blue hair. That would have never happened when I was working there. Never. There was nobody going to be coming in with, crazy dyed hair. It had, those things had to be in reason, it couldn't be just crazy stuff. The dress was getting really sloppy. The customer service went downhill. They were very unprofessional around. There was a lot of laughing and giggling and goofing off around the customer. Those were things that were never, ever, ever allowed when I worked there. And I was like, God, my wife would say, what's wrong? I said, it just kills me to walk in here. The professionalism is going downhill and fast. And we're talking, this is, 25 years ago. It's nowadays, nowadays it's totally changed. You don't have the same kind of setup. It's almost shop on your own. I mean, there's, the business model now is you have just a handful of people in the store, and you're going around and you're ringing your own stuff up and bagging your own stuff. They still have traditional registers, but more and more they've done that stuff, to save money, and it's just different. So I get it. I come from a different time, and there were people before me that came from an even more different time. I get it, but we're not getting better. It's getting worse in a lot of ways. Now, in that, I still see people who have been taught the right way, and they are very good at what they do. And you can tell. I tell them all the times. I will tell a young person, I'll say, I can tell through you that you've got great parents. And you know what? They will beam and they will say, hey, thanks for saying that. I do. I have a wonderful father and a mother, and they have, instilled in me, how to be as a young person or whatever. I'm proud of my parents. Let's say you should be. Or I would tell them something, say, when you go home today, and you see your parents, tell them that this guy named David, just tell them this guy named David, tell them great job. They said, what? Like, and I would give them like 4 or 5 quick things that just jumped out at me. And they would say, oh, thanks for saying that. My dad will be, if it's a girl, they always say their dad. They'll say, my dad will be glad to hear that. I said, just tell him good job. It's noticed. And, so I again, going back to the thing, instilling, some kind of something in somebody, encourage somebody. Nowadays, you're almost encouraged. I'm talking about young people, and maybe even others. They're almost encouraged to do the wrong. I mean, to be the freak show now is almost the celebrated thing. It burns me up, And my granddaughter, she'll tell me stuff that she sees in school, hears in school. Thank you, Broski, for the like. I appreciate it on YouTube as well. But when she'll say all the stuff that in middle school has been living hell. I'm so glad that she'll be in high school next year. They say it gets better there, and it's been a battle for us. We just didn't have we weren't set up to really homeschool, and that it was something I really thought about. But I like for her to be able to navigate it, and we all have to, kids are going to grow up and they got to go in this real crappy world, and they've got to figure out how to navigate that. And I don't rely on the school to teach my kids anything about spirituality or anything. That's my job. You just give them the basic stuff, and the other stuff I'll teach them. You can give them the mathematics. I'll reinforce it at home or whatever. But history, all that stuff, we'll talk about it at home. And because that's my job. I'm a parent. And I'm a parent now. I got a 13-year-old, soon to be 14-year-old that we've been raising, since she was 2. And so you give these kids the tools they go out and they're living this, having to work within this crappy world. And but you can see, the ones that are really trying and working, doing the right things, and that's almost the ones that don't get promoted. That it's the ones that are freak show. That's the ones that get promoted nowadays. It's it's crazy. I was listening to someone just here a while back, and I may have mentioned this on the air, and they were a professional. I mean, a business professional, and they were interviewing a new. And I've been told by people that maybe this was, maybe in today's world is accepted. I can tell you with this manager, it was not, and they didn't get the job. When the person came in to interview for the job, they took their shoes off and put their legs up underneath them on the little, like it was like a chair, but like a bigger chair, and just got all comfy and with a cup of coffee, and they brought with them for the interview. And I can tell you that moment, there was no way that person was going to hire them. It was over. But that I would have never. That's not even in my thinking to ever do something like that. To me, you come dressed professional, you look professional, you act professional, you speak professional, respectfully. You answer questions. You look somebody in the eye. You listen and you respond, and all those things that you do. Yeah, Ernest, the times of sanity and good behavior are gone. I know, and I feel like I'm out of season here. Like, what's happened? The world has changed around me, And I told I was at a drive-through here a while back, and I've had problems with this place. The young people, and I get it. You know what makes me mad? And this is another reason why customer service is going downhill. They think they're doing good. They're doing bad. It's that stupid clock that they put on the drive-through. Listen, everybody wants to get through there quickly. I get that. But these employees they're being trained to sacrifice quality for speed. And I've watched this from the inside, and you can see that clock. I mean, it's huge, you know, and it's counting down, and they get in trouble. That's why they're constantly having you pull over. They're constantly having you. They got to get you off that clock, or they get in trouble. It's bullcrap. And I get it. You won't speed, but what happens is they're just slinging everything at you, and they're talking really fast. And I'll tell them, hey, slow down. I need you to listen to me. But I went to the drive-through. It's been a few weeks ago, and she was the best I had seen, I swear, in 5 years. And I told her, I said, you are good. And I said, I don't care what anybody tells you at your store, your manager, I don't care. You keep doing what you're doing, because I'm telling you, I'm the customer, and that used to mean something. And I said, I don't know if it means anything anymore, but I'm telling you, you are very professional, and you made the process so easy. And I just want to say thank you. And she said, well, I appreciate that. I don't think anybody had ever told her that, Ernest. Now we live in the societies at which we used to laugh at movies and TV shows. Yeah, good morning, Watchman. And I get it. I'm an older guy. I mean, I just turned 61, but I do try to look through the things to me, right is always right. I mean, it's not. I get, culture is going to change, dress. Every generation has had a little bit different, style or whatever. But listen, respect is never out of style. Professionalism is never wrong. It's never out of season. These are qualities that we should have in great abundance. How we talk to people, how we treat people, have respectful tone and respectful words, to be young men and young women and become, someone that is respected, that will listen and respond with, my gosh, some kind of intelligence. That's what I was raised around. And to be a gentleman. I mean, I'll tell you this. I won't say where, who, or what, because I probably get smacked. But I had a friend of mine, and we agree. His dad raised him. I remember him telling me he was the only son in a family. And when he came to dinner every night, he was to have on. I mean, he didn't come in a t-shirt and jeans. He dressed for dinner. That's the way he wanted his son to, and the young ladies and stuff. And so you see that in the TV sometimes where they dress for dinner. He did that. I mean, he dressed. He didn't come sloppy to the dinner table, and there was decorum at the dinner table. And by the way, we're talking about the dinner table, which is a lot of times that's just gone now. They've messed everybody's schedule up and everything. Who a lot of people don't even have a normal dinner time. It's on the go. It's everything. But that's what he expected. We have a sit down dinner. We talk. There wasn't no cell phones or anything like that then. TVs are off, whatever's off, and they're having conversations. So that's what he was raised in. So he's raised to be a Southern gentleman. Now, this is a man's man. This guy, he never was military, but he was attached to military. He'd been in covert operations all over the world, doing things to try to, defend energy and different things that he was hired to do. He actually went to the University of Florida, and he was an engineer. But he got brought into some stuff, and he made some really good money doing very dangerous work. Sometimes it was, detecting dangers, mines, whatever. He did a lot of different stuff. He showed me a few pictures. You can't show them all. But anyway, he went to a class that was required of him. I wasn't there. He was required to go to this class, and they told him. Now we're talking about a Southern gentleman. And gentleman is gentleman. Just say that he was that typical, traditional Southern gentleman. The kind of guy that we should be, open the doors for our wives, and shut the door, and, things like that. And he went in this class, and he almost got kicked out. And what was his crime? He said, I opened the door for my wife, the car door or whatever door, and they got onto him. And they told him, we don't want you opening the door for us. You are not better than us. We're equal. We're this. We're that. We don't want, we don't need that. That's demeaning to us. And he told them, he said, listen, let me tell you something. My dad raised me this way. It's the way I am, and it's the way I'm going to be. And there ain't nothing here going to change that. And they were people that they took him to the side like, hey, man, like, we get it, but you're going to have to just be quiet through this. It's not going to work. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. He said, if they want to fire me, I'll go get another job. And he was upset. I mean, he was telling me about that. And that's how much we've changed, and I always, but you do hear that more and more, where to be a gentleman is now frowned upon, and that's ridiculous. Yeah, Watchman, absolutely. I did that just yesterday. I was at a store come out. There were two ladies coming, and the first lady, she said, I said, "Come on in," and she said, "Thank you, sir." And the other lady was a little bit ways away. I just stood there and held it and said, and she come up and she thanked me so much for holding the door. You see, they appreciated it. I do that. I'm not thinking I'm, towering over someone, or I'm a man, you're a woman, so I'm better. No, that's bullcrap. It's just decorum. It's something that we do. We're to be a gentleman. I hold it open for kids, old people. I hold it open for men. I do that. That's just good things. I think of some of them doors they got on buildings and stuff. Children and old people, which I'm getting older, they'll knock you down if you're not careful. The door will slam back, and I've seen older people almost not be able to get in the door, and I'll go to open it because somebody let it fall back on them, and it almost knocks them down. They're really too stiff, and I mean they almost slam, and they will knock you down. And but how does that go out of style? Because and you don't have a right to now tell me that I'm wrong. See, that's getting in my business right there. And it's one thing to be in business, to learn how to be the best you can be as at what you do, to be the best employee you can, to be the best this, the best that, and how to do better. But it's getting in my business when you try to tell me how I'm supposed to behave as a man, or how I'm supposed to behave as an adult, and what I've been taught is all wrong. I see my dad. I could just see my dad if I was in something like that. I would see what he's saying. Now I have respect for all people. I may not agree with your lifestyle, but I have respect for people. I always tell them I'm not the speech police. I'm not this. If you want some wisdom and stuff, I'll try to help you. I don't go through life trying to tell people how to live their life. I don't do that. But I mean, I am here to help and be a listening ear. And if somebody wants something, I have people come to me and they'll ask me. They'll say, what do you think about this? Well, I'll try to give the best answer. Sometimes they like the answer. Sometimes they don't, and that's fine. You can take it or leave it as you've asked me. But now we have people telling us it's not enough to be the best this at your job. Now you have to be all these other things that go straight against your belief system. And I would say it's really bad other places. It's probably a little slow to take root and hold here. It's being resisted pretty hard, I can tell, because that has disappeared. I have not seen that in a bit. I think that fell really hard in my area among many companies and stuff. It got swept out the door. But that's what was going on. But I remember him telling me that. He said, I may not be working here much longer. I thought, you get another job? He goes, no, I think I'm going to be asked to leave. And I'm okay with it. He says, I don't want to work for a place that tells me that my kindness is wrong, that my upbringing is now offensive. He goes, I'm just going to tell you right now, it didn't go good. And he said it was tense. It was tense, but he said I was kind, but I was firm. And he said that I was told that my job was on the line. He ended up going to another job, another company, and has doesn't work there anymore. And I don't know how much that played into it, but I know that was. He said I just can't. I can't exist in this, you know. And that just to me, it kind of is a picture of where we're at. I've seen some people stand up and say, and they've come and told me, on the side, they would say, "Hey, Dave, I want to tell you what happened today." And this has been a few years ago, but they would say, someone said, I was, there was something that bothered me in my faith and what I was being confronted with. I stood up and told him that. And he said, I went and talked to, other people. And he said, because I stood up, others stood up, and now we have pushed this back. He said, so we won the battle, but he said, the war is not won. It's going to come again. And, because of things that were being put in, I don't want to say what those things are, but you can imagine as this woke world that we're living in, some things that are being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And a lot of that has stopped now. But it was a time when that was being very much pushed. When of people that I know that worked for other companies and were being forced to go to seminars and stuff, and they were being, I mean, it's brainwashing. It's absolute brainwashing. They are forced to go. They're forced to take part in the class. They're forced to say things, to role play, to do different things in these, or to as and this is to hold your job. If you don't do it, you will be terminated, and that's kind of where we're at. And that we need to stand against those things, and it's going to be hurtful because there's going to be those that will, they'll be the ones that get made the example of. But the more we stand against, the more we can stop that. It's a real thing, and I can imagine being a business owner now. We see the lawsuits that have happened. We see those businesses who have tried to stand on their values and what have happened. And I've talked to some of those by email and thanked them for their stand, for their faith, and that they had our prayers and we're watching and we're out here and we support them. And it's like water. It's like an oasis in the middle of the desert. They say thank you. They say we have one of them that I contacted was the bakers in, was it Oregon? I talked with them by email a couple of times, and I was the female, I think, the wife, and I said, listen, you're not alone. We're out here with you. And if y'all start like a thing, you know, a GoFundMe or something, let me know, and I'll give to it, because they were being, I mean, they were being fined, and they were being taken to court, and there's all the fees and stuff for lawyers, court costs, and all that. And she said, we're under a crazy attack, and said all we said was is that, and we were very kind, is we recommended them to another place that didn't matter to them, and we basically gave away business that we just didn't feel comfortable doing. That was our faith. But she said it was a target. It wasn't they did it on purpose, and this has happened so many times. Like, they didn't come just like, oh, I can't believe you won't do that. No, it was, they knew they wouldn't. They wanted, this, you've heard these stories. They did it on purpose to target the business because they wanted to destroy them. And there's been some victories there. There's been some that's lost really hard. But people, they need to know that we're not alone, that we're praying for them and we're supporting them. Because if it's in that community now, to be in our community within 2 to 5 years, it'll be businesses that we know, it'll be people we know, it'll be people that live in our community that are good people, good, honest, hardworking Americans who are trying to, raise their family right, be the best they can in the community, and are wonderful additions to any community. And they're being demonized by those forces that, want to press their agenda on them. And it's horrible. There's a Korean, is it Korean? I think they're Korean, and they run a little business here. It's a donut shop, and I go in there from time to time. I used to go in there a lot. Me and my wife used to go by there a lot. I don't eat many donuts, but when I do, I will give them the business, and they're wonderful people, and they have the rosary on the wall. And I imagine that in some communities, I could just see people coming. They're offending me. They've got the rosary. I'm not a Catholic, but they had their faith. They were demonstrating in their business. That's their business. That doesn't bother me at all. It's a business. I'm in there to buy something. That's their thing, and they're just it's their faith, and that's what they do as far as how they practice their faith and all. And and they're the kindest people you'd ever meet. Just super kind, respectful, just wonderful people. And but that's the kind of thing people start targeting stuff like that. Like, I can't walk in. That's offensive to me. I had a picture hanging on my wall one time at work, and it is I'm a history guy, so people know that. They love my Western. I've got John Wayne right now as one picture that's up. I've moved offices, so I've got to put a few up. But people love my old Western pictures that I put up, and I'll have history pictures, and I'll have pictures from the war between the states, and I'll have generals and stuff like that I hang up. And I had this picture of Stonewall Jackson, and it wasn't the way the picture was made. It didn't have any imagery or anything in there that would that what's my favorite donut? Well, there's two things. I'm a sucker for coconut. I just had my coconut cake for my birthday, so the donut with the coconut on top. And I love the apple fritters. I love those apple fritters. They're so good. That's my two favorite. And I know that's not really a donut, but that's what you can get there. And I like cinnamon rolls. I like that. I like other donuts. I'm just a fan of glazed donuts. I mean, I don't like chocolate. Sprinkles are fine, but the pink ones, I like that one. And if it's cream filled, if it's just cream, not the lemon and all that, I like that. So that's kind of what I would get. Um, and that's what we would shop. Usually, my wife would get. She would get the cream filled donut, and I'd get the apple fritter. And my granddaughter, I think she wanted. I don't remember. I think now donut holes or something. I also at this place. Oh, I know what it was. My wife and my granddaughter used to love. They also at that place they sold the pig in the blanket, and my wife liked to go there and get the pig in the blanket and a donut. And we'd get coffee. They'd have some coffee, and we'd sit there in the little store. They had a couple of tables. It's a small business, but they finally put a drive-through in, which was great. But we would go there sometimes before church on Sunday morning, and it was just great. We'd sit there, and it was just very peaceful. I have great memories of that. Eclairs, my mom loved those. Used donuts. Um, what is my take on the demise of Spirit Airlines? Well, I don't know everything about it. My understanding is the Biden administration stopped the merger with JetBlue, and that they said that was the demise of it. I think with anything, it all the conglomerate stuff is taking over, and it's more a destruction of. And I don't know that particular situation, but what you come into communities in your local business, people that do things, they're being swallowed up by corporate America. I mean, and I'm not against. I mean, I get it. It's capitalist. You have business, but they do things in volume and stuff, and the others will squeeze them out by being able to do that. But I'm a big fan of mom and pop stores. That's what I call them. Whether it's a hardware store, a little store you walk in, they're. I remember I went up on the mountain and for my church, and it's a little country church. It's a real country community, and there's a little country store up there. And I'm from down in the valley, and I've got all these chains, and I've got the stores. They're ran. We know who runs them. I'll say it like that. So I see this little country store up on the mountain. I told my wife, I said, "Oh, I like this community already. Got a little country store." I said, "I don't care to pay more. I'll stop there and give them business." And I walked in, so disappointed. It wasn't the mom and pop country store. I was like, uh, I don't ever go there. I just can't. I just can't do it. I just, it's not the same. It's just different. And I was like, okay. It's hard to find them. It really is. There was a store when I was growing up. This, to me, this is my memory. There's a couple of them. One of my memories is when I went to this store and they had a butcher. It's a little store. It's got the little, foodstuffs, and they sold the cigarettes and all that. And it was just up from where I live. I actually had three little stores like that. One of them had a bait shop there. They sold the bait for fishing. We'd go in there. We'd buy the comic books and the bubble gum and the little Coke bottles and stuff. And you got all that. And the other store had a gas station, a couple of pumps. That's all it had. But they had a butcher in there, and I would go in there and talk to. I mean, I'm talking sawdust on the floor. He wore the white apron, and it was a little bitty thing. But he sold a lot of meat out of that. I mean, a lot of things like that. 17,000. That's hard, man. I mean, where do those people go to work? I mean, it's getting worse. But that when I think of a small growing up store, that's what I think of. When you walk in, they know who you are. And it's Mayberry-ish. I mean, it's friendly. Nowadays everything's behind the counter because of thefts and stuff like that. Well, we'd have never thought about doing that when I was a kid. My dad, oh my gosh, I'd have never even thought about that. But I do. That's what I think of. I think of going in, and you got, they had just different things. They had a little bit of everything. So it was like, because for years, I mean, there was no what we call the big superstore, the grocery store that came along a little later. But a lot of you had that little country store where you went in and they had a little bit of everything from kitchen utensils to food stuff. To, you could buy something to fix your tire. They might sell meat. They had some of them might even had a little grill. They grilled stuff. They fixed biscuits in the morning and burgers in the afternoon and all that. That's what I remember. That's what I like. And what was the store when I was growing up? Zayre's, and they had the little kitchen area, whatever they called that. I love that. Kmart was like that at one time. I mean, to me, that's what I grew up with. And nowadays, you have a little bit of that. They're starting to bring it back with some things, but it's still it's not the same because it's really too big. I mean, hey, I like to walk in a Buc-ee's sometimes, but I'm not shopping there every day. I mean, come on, I have to drive a bit to get there, and I don't like the huge crowds. I just like a place you can pull up and walk in and, hey, Bob, how you doing? And you're talking to people that and you just do your business and get on down the road. I miss that, and there are still some places like that, but these little and also the big stores build on the bypass around a city, a small town, and they kill Main Street. Main Street gets destroyed. There's a move in Georgia. It's called, I can't remember the official name, but it's restoration of main streets throughout Georgia. And what they've done is they come in and they fix up the sidewalks and the lighting and put benches in. They bury the power lines and stuff like that, and they try to encourage people to come back downtown. And there's a lot of towns I get a magazine, a tourist magazine in the state, and they've highlighted that. I think every time I've gotten one, it'll say a new city, and some of them are a little more big city because they're near Atlanta, but a lot of them are just small cities, and they redo. Because used to, when I was traveling a lot and speaking in churches, you would go through these little towns sometimes, and it would just be buildings boarded up. Some gang spray paint on the front of the window or something like that. It's starting to come back. I mean, the antique stores started coming in there, little restaurants. I like to support stuff like that. He says, Ernest says, yes, Biden admin stopped their deal and Trump admin refused to bail them out with $500 million. So 17,000 jobs are being lost, but they started a crowdfunding and got $500 million. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I want all the options that I can get if I'm flying. I mean, my gosh, you got to have something that's a little more frugal, and you can get something that's, within line. I mean, if people use that, what was when I remember when I flew into, and this is 1982, I flew into LAX on United. From LA to San Diego, we flew Southwest, if I remember right. That was a regional type. They would fly those short hops. I mean, we were in the air 20 minutes, and I felt like, it's all a climb, and then you're landing. And then I flew. I think it was. I don't remember if it was United or Delta on the way back when I came back home, but you have those small airlines, and a lot of those can do. They can do, short route, dedicated routes. Was trying to say to cities, there and back in the same day, kind of thing, and that's kind of cool. We see that out of Chattanooga. Chattanooga's come a long way. Atlanta's so big. A lot of people will take they're flying out of Chattanooga, or they'll take the van, down to the Atlanta airport. They park here and drive down there. That's a big business up here. Or to Nashville, or I know they do Atlanta, Nashville, Knoxville. I guess they do all those. So Sprint Airlines was good. Let me see. Well, I never flew it, so I don't know. Actually, over 337 million, the latest. Okay, wow. Well, it's good to see people kind of jump in there and do some things, change the narrative. Yeah, that's all good, man. That's great. Well, I got to get off here. I got to reset. We got the morning show coming up with Biscuit Boy. I think he's trying to call me. I got to call him back. I enjoyed the talk. I appreciate everybody being here. We'll be back in about 30 minutes, or right at 30 minutes, depending on what he says on the phone call. But great discussion. Happy Saturday. We'll be back with one more show for sure. And then I've got to see, I'm going to breakfast with my family who's flying back out to Nevada, and we'll see them soon. Hartsville is a nasty, grunge airport I've ever seen. Okay, I've never, think I've ever been there. All right, let me get some music up. We'll be right back. Let me call Biscuit. We'll see what's up. Take care.